I'm Marcus, 32 years old, and for the past decade, I've been my family's unofficial safety net. Every family seems to have that one person, the one who steps in when bills are overdue, lends money that never gets returned, and ensures nobody ends up sleeping in their car. That's me. I've never complained because I believe that's what families do, support each other. Having grown up with little, I promised myself that once I made it, I'd make sure no one else in my family had to struggle. However, I've come to realize there's a significant difference between being generous and being taken for granted. This year, my birthday highlighted that distinction painfully. I planned a small but meaningful celebration, nothing extravagant, just intimate with loved ones, good food, and a chance to relax. I reserved a private room at a quaint local restaurant and paid in advance a non-refundable $400. I even chose a location close to everyone's home to eliminate the excuse of distance. I sent calendar invites and reminders to each family member: my parents, my older sister Kendra and her husband Tom, my younger brother Jordan, and even my cousin Ray and her boyfriend, who always managed to be invited despite never reciprocating. The day arrived, and I was excited. I wore the blazer my mom gifted me last Christmas and arrived 15 minutes early to ensure everything was set, including the cake. But as minutes turned into an hour, the room remained empty. A quick check on Instagram shattered my expectations. A post from Kendra at a steakhouse with everyone: Mom, Dad, Jordan, Ray, even Ray's boyfriend. Family night. Grateful for the real ones. #blessed. Read the caption. The embarrassment was suffocating. How could this be? My aunt had commented they missed me, to which Kendra replied that I had other plans. Other plans? I sat there numb, a mix of humiliation and clarity washing over me. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. I recalled last Christmas when they forgot to inform me about the change of dinner venue, and at Kendra's bridal shower, where she thanked everyone but me despite my contributions. I thought about all I had done for them: $500 monthly for Mom's rent, covering Dad's car insurance since he got laid off in 2018, paying for Kendra's wedding photographer, Jordan's security deposit in Atlanta, and even Ray's dental emergency bill. I never kept score. I assumed they'd show me the same love when it mattered, like on my birthday. Understanding this wasn't an accident was tough to swallow. It felt like a betrayal dressed up as a hashtag. As I drove home with shaking hands, emotions transitioned from confusion and humiliation to a newfound clarity about where I stood with my family. I sat on the couch in the dark, not crying, not even feeling as if I could. I just kept refreshing that post, watching the likes go up, like the world was confirming that I didn't matter to those I prioritized most. I could have sent a snarky text or called and demanded answers, but I chose a different path. I opened my banking app and canceled the rent transfer for Mom. Her building would notify her in a few days. The automated payment for Dad's car insurance? Gone. His policy would lapse if he didn't act fast. One by one, each auto payment, each silent favor, each thankless transaction that had become part of my routine was canceled. For good measure, I posted a story on Instagram. Not petty, not dramatic, just a photo of my untouched birthday cake, with a caption that said, "Reminder, I'm the one who pays Mom's rent and Dad's car insurance." No hashtags, no tags, no names. But they saw it. I know they did because the next morning, my phone blew up. Missed calls from Mom, texts from Dad asking if everything was okay. Even Jordan reached out. Kendra remarked, "You're being dramatic, we didn't think you'd care." Of course, Kendra had the gall to add, "Wow, if you had an issue, you could have said something. No need to air dirty laundry like that." Right? It was me airing dirty laundry, not the ones who ghosted me on my birthday for a family night I wasn't invited to. But I didn't answer any of them. I left every text on read, let every call ring out. I went silent. I wasn't even sure what I wanted from them. An apology? A reason? Maybe I just wanted them to sit in the silence for once, to feel my absence as I had felt theirs. Let the utilities lapse. Let the rent notices pile up. Let them wonder if maybe, just maybe, the person they'd overlooked had finally stopped showing up. And that was just the beginning. I didn't expect the silence to hit them so quickly or so hard. By afternoon, Mom had called 4 times. Her last voicemail was oddly chipper. "Hey, honey, Not sure if you got my message earlier. Just wanted to check in. I think something weird happened with the rent this month, maybe a glitch. Anyway, love you. Call me. A glitch, right? As if the sudden withdrawal of all financial help I'd been providing was some kind of banking error and not a blaring wake-up call. Then Dad texted, "Got a notice about the insurance? You sure you didn't forget to update the card? Looks like it's overdue. Call me when you can." Like it was some minor oversight. Like I had somehow dropped the ball when I'd been carrying the entire team for years. And then there was Kendra. Oh, Kendra. Her first message was short and smug. "Seriously, Marcus, you're embarrassing yourself. We didn't exclude you, we just wanted a chill dinner. You're taking it way too personally." When I didn't respond, she followed up an hour later with, "You could have just said you felt left out. You didn't need to make Mom and Dad freak out like this." I stared at that one for a while. What got me wasn't even the gaslighting. It was how quickly she pivoted from mocking me to blaming me for their actions, as if I'd caused all this by reacting to their cruelty rather than their orchestrating it in the first place. It wasn't about feelings, it was about a choice, a deliberate one. They hadn't forgotten me, nor thought I wouldn't care. They knew precisely what they were doing, and that realization hurt more than I expected. I didn't reply to her either, not because I lacked words, but because I had too many, and none of them would fix the core issue. They valued me for what I gave, not for who I was. The next few days were quiet, painfully so. No new posts from Kendra, no calls from Mom. On the fourth day, Jordan showed up at my door. Literally. He stood on my porch like he'd popped over to borrow a lawnmower hoodie on, hands in pockets, sheepish grin. "Hey, man," he said, as if everything was perfectly fine. I leaned against the doorframe. "Didn't realize you were in town." "Yeah," he replied. "I drove up, wanted to talk in person." I stepped aside and let him in as he walked past me, like it was still his place too. The door for him. The atmosphere felt like we were teenagers again, despite the fact that he had missed my birthday dinner without bothering to inform me. He sat on the couch and gestured for me to join him. "Are you mad?" he asked, which only ignited a spark within me. I chose not to sit down. "No, I'm not mad," I said firmly. I felt humiliated, and there's a difference. He raised his hands in surrender. "All right, that's fair. But do you really think we planned some big conspiracy? We were just looking to have a casual night out. No one meant to hurt you." I wandered into the kitchen, needing something to occupy my hands, so I picked up a glass of water. Staring out the window briefly, I turned back to him. "Jordan, I wasn't even invited," I pointed out. He frowned in disbelief. "That's not true. If that's the case, why didn't anyone respond when I sent out the invites? Why was there no reply to my text from the restaurant? Why did Kendra claim I had other plans? You knew I was sitting alone in a private room while you posted a group photo as if I was a complete stranger." His gaze shifted away momentarily as he rubbed his jaw. "We didn't think you'd mind," he admitted. "You've always seemed so self-reliant." I released a short, bitter laugh. "You mean because I pay for everything and ask for nothing in return?" He remained silent as I nodded. "That's what I expected." Looking uncomfortable, he continued, "Mom and Dad are worried sick. Apparently, the rent office called, and Dad's stressing about the car situation. Can you maybe give them a heads up before making big decisions?" I placed the glass deliberately on the coffee table. "I've been giving them heads-ups for years, Jordan," I explained calmly. "Every month through quiet support without complaints or recognition. You can't just waltz in now and demand I do it loudly because you're finally noticing the silence." He rose to his feet, showing signs of frustration. "So what? You'll just cut them off? You think you're punishing us, but you're only making life harder for everyone." "No," I replied with composure. "You did that when you decided I wasn't enough of a family member to have a seat at the table." He stared at me intently, as if searching for words that wouldn't come across as defensive or foolish. Ultimately, he found none. "I should go," he mumbled. I nodded in agreement and stepped aside to let him out. He paused at the doorway and turned back. "This seems petty, Marcus," I replied. "Perhaps you've forgotten what it feels like to be excluded." I closed the door behind him and locked it. For a few moments, I stood there with my hand on the knob, my heart pounding not from the argument, but from the weight of finally expressing what I'd hidden for so long. I'd been teaching myself to be the bigger person, convincing myself I didn't need acknowledgement. But in truth, I did. I wanted to matter for who I was, not just for what I provided. For the first time in years, I wasn't going to apologize for expecting that. The consequences hadn't even started yet. Mom was still pretending to be ignorant of the situation, Dad likely blaming expired credit cards, and Kendra would shift from smug to sulky the moment her next spa day was disrupted by a late payment from her Venmo request to Dad. I could already sense the storm gathering, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. It took precisely 5 days for the facade to crumble. 5 days of silence without me stepping in to fix things or cover their bills. On the 6th morning, I awoke to a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was sharp, strained, barely hiding the panic beneath. "Marcus, I don't know what's going on with you, but I've just received a notice from the building manager. The rent hasn't gone through, and if it's not resolved by Friday, eviction proceedings will start. I don't understand why you'd let this happen. Call me." I replayed the message twice, once to hear it, and then again to feel it. No apologies, no "we miss you," no recognition of their neglect, just confusion over why their source of rent payments had dried up. 2 hours later, a nearly identical message came from Dad, passive-aggressively noting that his car insurance had lapsed because I must have changed banks and instructing me to let him know when it's fixed. The assumption was I'd immediately resume my role after making a point, as if this was all some dramatic performance for attention. Instead of responding, I opened my phone's notes app and began listing every expense I'd covered in the past 3 years: rent, car insurance, prescription refills, utilities, wedding gifts, emergency loans, unexpected birthday dinners, over $42,000 in total. I had no intention of sending it, but seeing it laid out reminded me how much I'd done something they'd clearly forgotten. The turning point arrived that Saturday. I was at home working through some emails when the doorbell rang. Checking the camera revealed Kendra outside, hair perfectly done, sunglasses on, holding a tray of ostensibly homemade cupcakes. Although they seemed store-bought and simply repackaged in a decorative tin for effect, some part of me felt compelled to hear what she'd say in person. Opening the door slightly, I greeted her with indifference. "Kendra." She gave a forced smile. "Hey, thought I'd drop by with cupcakes. I didn't reach for them." "Why?" Her smile wavered. "Because it's your birthday week." "Well, it was, and I know things got a little weird." I leaned against the frame. "Weird?" She sighed dramatically. "Okay, tense. But you've kind of made it tense, Marcus. You blew up the group chat with that post." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't say anything in the chat." "You know what I mean," she said, pushing past me into the living room as if she owned the place. "You posted about paying Mom's rent and Dad's insurance. Now everyone's panicking that you're cutting them off." Slowly closing the door, I replied with measured calmness. "I didn't say I was cutting anyone off." "But you did," she insisted. "With the rent, insurance, everything else. It's not just about money, it's how you handled it without talking to any of us." Sitting down across from her, I finally met her gaze directly. "Kendra, did you inform me why you organized a dinner across town without me? Did you consult me before making that decision?" She blinked in surprise and hesitated. "It wasn't my dinner. Ray chose the venue," and I laughed, greeting everyone as they tagged each other in the post. "You commented saying you had your own plans. That was your message." "Don't pretend you're surprised I listened to it." Her expression turned serious. "This is my point. You're being dramatic." "We didn't think you'd mind. You always do your own thing, never asking for anything, acting superior." I stood up. "No, I act like someone with boundaries. I don't ask because I've learned it doesn't work in this family unless there's guilt involved. But I contribute, pay, support, cover. What do I get in return? A seat behind the camera, a footnote in your lives." She placed the tin of cupcakes on the table and crossed her arms. "So, do you want an apology now?" I handed the tin back to her. "No, just honesty. If I'm not considered family, fine, but don't smile to my face and forget my birthday. Don't take my money and then act indifferent. You want things back to normal? That was never normal." Her face reddened. "Mom's scared of losing her place. Dad's car is uninsured, and you're risking their security over hurt feelings." "No, they risked it themselves by relying on someone they don't respect. I'm stepping out of a role written for me without consent." For a moment, she stood silently, as though she couldn't believe I was standing my ground. Then she turned to leave. "I hope this is worth it," she said. "I hope it gives you clarity," I replied as she left. The consequences came swiftly after that. Mom called, panicking 2 days later, not to apologize, but worried I don't know what we're supposed to do. They said we have until Friday before they start the process. "Why are you doing this, Marcus?" I almost replied, but decided against it. Instead, I prepared a message I'd send once things settled, ensuring they'd see me beyond what I provided. A week passed before sending that message, 7 days ignoring texts and calls in a group chat, as silent as if there had been a bereavement. Internally, they just lost their support and were realizing it. Mom messaged me 5 times in a day, first begging, then guilt-tripping, followed by reminders about needing stability at her age with no mention of the birthday or dinner, just expectations laced with panic. Dad's voicemail made me pause, Marcus. "I don't know what went wrong. We all made mistakes, your mother, sister. Me too. But this insurance issue is serious. If something happens while I'm uninsured, please, son, don't penalize us for Kendra's actions." That struck differently. The admission of fault, not mine, was new. Still unchanged were facts he benefited just as much despite witnessing the cycle repeatedly. Silence equals complicity. I sat down with notes ready and composed my message, not emotional or cruel, just honest. "Hi everyone. I wanted to clarify, since there seems to be confusion, I haven't cut anyone off. I've merely ceased doing things unappreciated from the start. I handled the rent, the car insurance, and the bills because I wanted to help, but I've realized my support was never valued, just taken for granted. I spent my birthday alone at a restaurant I paid for. No one came, no one texted. Instead, you all had your own dinner and posted about it as if I didn't exist. That was no oversight. It was a message, and I understood it clearly. So here's where we stand. I'm not paying for people who don't treat me like family. If that ever changes, we can talk, but until then, I'm focusing on those who genuinely care, not just my bank account." I sent this message with no fluff or room for misinterpretation and watched as each little zine icon appeared in our family group chat, Kendra first, then Ray, then Mom, followed by Dad. The replies came quickly. Kendra shot back almost immediately, expressing disbelief that I aired everything out in front of everyone and accusing me of making them feel like garbage. I didn't respond. Mom chimed in a minute later, acknowledging my hurt but asking me not to punish everyone for one night. She claimed they loved me, which stung because, while true in a way, love that comes with constant demands and no respect is ownership, not affection. Then there was Ray, claiming he hadn't known it was my birthday dinner because Kendra said I was doing my own thing. Classic Ray, always dodging accountability. Dad didn't respond in the chat but reached out privately a few hours later, admitting his mistake. He acknowledged that I had done more for the family than anyone recognized and confessed that letting Kendra take charge was easier for him. He offered to have a personal talk just between us, which took me by surprise. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I waited a few days to see what would unfold without my involvement. Mom began posting passive-aggressive messages on Facebook, the type where they imply family isn't always about blood and that some people use good deeds to control others later on. Kendra stuck to her narrative by sharing Instagram stories of dinners with friends captioned with "at least these people show up." Ray went silent, which was probably for the best. Jordan surprised me by texting, admitting he finally understood and offering to hang out with no pressure. His message lingered in my thoughts longer than I expected. Jordan had always been the neutral party, too passive to defend me and too loyal to Kendra to question her. But perhaps now he saw things differently. Still, I didn't reply immediately. A few more weeks passed. Mom missed her rent deadline. I found out because her building mistakenly sent the overdue notice to me since I was still listed as her emergency contact. I didn't intervene or pay. She worked it out eventually. Dad missed his DMV renewal due to expired insurance and had to cover it himself for the first time in 6 years. Then one Saturday morning, Dad unexpectedly showed up at my door holding 2 coffees. He looked older than I remembered, grayer and more worn around the eyes. I slowly opened the door. "You drove all the way up here handing me a cup. Didn't think you'd answer the phone." I stepped aside. "You were right." We sat quietly for a while, sipping coffee, watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes past the house. It felt normal until he finally spoke up. I read your message a few times. I think I needed to see it in writing to realize how blind I'd been. I didn't say anything, letting him continue. I let Kendra do too much of the talking. She's always been the loud one, and you've always been the quiet one. I guess I just let her fill the space. I nodded slowly. She didn't just fill it, Dad. She used it, weaponized it. He winced. Yeah, she did. There was another pause. I'm not asking for money, he added quickly. I came here because I wanted to apologize. Not because I'm losing something, but because I've already lost something you. And I don't want to keep doing that. That caught me off guard. It was the first real apology I'd heard from him that didn't come with conditions or requests, just honesty. I set the cup down, thank you, I said. That means more than you probably know. He nodded. I'm not perfect, but I'm learning and hope one day the rest of the family learns too. After he left, I sat with it all, letting it sink in. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. I was just tired. Tired of being the one to keep the engine running while everyone else enjoyed the ride as passengers. But now they were finally realizing what the road looked like without me. Weeks turned into months, and Kendra eventually sent me a long email, half apology, half deflection. I didn't respond, not because I hated her, but because I didn't trust her. Not yet. Mom called a few times, each time a little softer, more like the woman I remembered. I answered the last call. We talked about nothing and everything, and for once, she didn't ask for help and I didn't offer it. That was the first real conversation we'd had in years. Jordan started visiting more often. He even invited me to his new apartment, paid for on his own. He offered me a drink, and we sat on his mismatched couch, watching a game like brothers who didn't need words to bridge gaps. I didn't go back to paying their bills, but I started building something else boundaries, and unexpectedly, they began respecting them. Some days were awkward, some were healing, but it was finally real. On my next birthday, I didn't make reservations or send out invites. I didn't pay for a single thing. Instead, I let people show me what they were willing to bring to the table. Story 2, Eric is my name. I suppose you could say that, at the age of 29, I've always been the supporting cast member in my own family. It's not the black sheep. You know the sort. That's right, it's more like the invisible one. Moving day lines, tools, and discreetly picking up the tab when Dad forgets his money are all handled by the guy who has been remembering every birthday since Rose's on Mother's Day. I'm not ostentatious. The noisy one isn't me. I'm the trustworthy one. Perhaps this is the reason it took me so long to see that I was being taken advantage of. Or worse, left out. It began modestly. This is a missed invitation. There was a group conversation that was forgotten. Oh, the text didn't reach you? I ignored it because I assumed someone had told you. Because when you love someone, you do that, don't you? You make the best assumption. You tend to assume the worst. Your anxieties don't speak for you. Sometimes, though, stillness is just the sound of someone trying not to cry in front of a dozen people you didn't even know existed, all wearing similar shirts. Ellie, my niece, was the recipient of the baby shower. In our long, complicated family tree, we have always referred to each other as aunt and uncle, even though she is actually my cousin's daughter. I arrived with a thoughtfully wrapped present, a blanket that I had commissioned from a woman who performed custom embroidery at the farmer's market. Across the corner, Ellie's name was embroidered in a gentle lavender calligraphy. I took pride in it, felt as though I had at last perfected a considerate, unique present. The location was a charming little bistro with a leased outdoor terrace behind it. Lights made of strings, centerpieces made out of mason jars. Fluttering in the wind are pastel streamers. When I got there, everyone was already there. I noticed my sister Jen chatting animatedly with her cousin Rachel at the drink table. Jen gave me the wave you give a mailman when I waved. Short, far away. It's almost theatrical. Nevertheless, I maintained a kind grin. I gave the blanket to the few relatives who genuinely recalled my name without being asked, signed the guest book, and struck up a conversation. I didn't bring up the picnic until halfway through the afternoon, while I was assisting one of the elder uncles in balancing a paper dish of small quiches. Anticipating next weekend's family picnic, I said nonchalantly. I skipped work for the day. Uncle Dave, who has always been the tough but endearing kind, laughed quietly. Yes, That was yesterday. I blinked. What? He cocked his head in my direction, as though he wanted to know if I was kidding or simply naive. Nobody told you, did they? Did I just stand there? My mouth parted, then shut again. I looked at the faces around me. Some people averted their gaze. Others, such as my cousin Maddie, simply gave me pitying looks. The last gut punch followed. I used to watch my cousin Nate when he was 6 years old, and he took out his phone and flipped it around to show me a group photo. They were all there, smiling faces, folding chairs, a huge picnic cake in the shape of a slice of watermelon, and matching navy blue shirts with the words Family Picnic 2025 written in white cursive across the chest. Everyone! Mom, Dad, Jen, Louisa, the great aunt, hasn't left her home in 2 years. I swallowed hard. Oh, I managed to say, forcing a chuckle that sounded as brittle as dried leaves. Then Jen walked by. She glanced at the photo and said, with that smug little half smile I've come to loathe, "It was kind of a close family thing." I turned to her, stunned. "I am close family." She raised an eyebrow. "Sure. But you know what I mean? No, Jen, I really didn't." I excused myself a few minutes later, pretended I had to take a call, then just walked to my car the whole drive home. My hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly I could see the whites of my knuckles. My head buzzed with questions. I'd asked myself a dozen times before, but never dared say aloud. Was I just boring? Had I done something to offend someone? Did they even notice I wasn't there? But somewhere between the freeway exit and my apartment parking lot, something in me clicked, not snapped. This wasn't rage. It was quieter than that, cooler, like a fog finally lifting. I realized something vital that day. It wasn't that they forgot me. It was that they deliberately chose not to include me. And worse, they didn't even feel the need to hide it anymore. I sat in the parking lot for almost an hour, staring at my phone, scrolling through old messages, group texts, Facebook posts, calendar invites. Everything from the past few months started to make a horrifying sort of sense. The birthday dinner I'd never been told about, the group vacation they'd already booked by the time they mentioned it to me, the sudden coldness from people I used to be close with. It wasn't an accident, it was a pattern, and I was done pretending not to notice. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled out a notebook. I made a list: names, obligations, favors, the quiet ways I've been propping up this family like an unpaid intern. Dad's car insurance, auto-drafted from my account. Mom's streaming subscriptions on my family plan. Jen's dog. I'd walked it every weekend for months when she was too busy. Cousin Ryan's job application. I'd rewritten his entire resume. I wasn't just forgotten, I was being used. And suddenly, I didn't feel like being useful anymore. I started with the little things. Quiet moves, subtle. I removed a few shared accounts, changed my Netflix password, took myself off the family phone plan I'd been subsidizing since college. Nobody noticed. Not yet, but they would. Then came the bigger things. I pulled out the spreadsheet I'd kept of all the bills I'd paid over the years. The things I told myself didn't matter, and I drafted a few polite but firm emails. Not furious, just professional, detached. And then I made one final decision. Something personal, something symbolic. The type of gesture that would communicate everything I'd never stated out loud. The next family occasion was only a week away. At least baptism ceremonial church reception after I was on the guest list. This time, shockingly. Probably because I still had the superior camera and they wanted excellent photographs. I RSVP'd yes, smiled, played along. But what I had prepared for that day, let's just say it ensured no one would ever forget me again. And that's where things really got interesting. The morning of Ellie's baptism was sunny and clear. The type of spring day you only get a few times a year. It was one of those ancient stone churches with huge archways that echoed your footsteps and stained glass windows. Wearing a fine gray suit that I had worn to my cousin's wedding 2 years prior, I arrived early. They couldn't afford a professional photographer, so I would take their picture for free. Naturally, I brought the camera, not wanting to violate tradition. The pews inside were filling up fast. Near the front, I noticed Jen snickering and whispering something to Mom. That drew my attention and provided me with a harsh acknowledgement, not a pleasant grin. As if I were a hotel doorman he hardly recognized. Even though I was left out, I knew how to act the part. So I strolled past them all and sat down close to the aisle where I would have a good view for pictures. However, I wasn't there only to snap photos this time. The service proceeded without incident. Everyone shouted and cooed as if it were the Broadway show's finale. But Ellie shed a few tears when the priest poured the water over her head. More out of habit than anything else, I took a few pictures. I kept looking at the front row, though, while everyone else was concentrating on the altar. Jenna, Mom, Dad, Rachel, a cousin. As if they were all in on a joke together. Aunt Marie was giggling, whispering, and nudging each other. I wasn't giggling, I was learning by heart. Everyone went to the church hall for the celebration following the wedding. It was tastefully adorned despite its modesty. Flower centerpieces, white tablecloths, and a large buffet table laden with finger sandwiches, deviled eggs, and little pink frosted cupcakes. Already, the present table was piled high. A huge stuffed elephant, perhaps worth more than my monthly food, had been brought by someone. I entered with a beautifully wrapped present in my hand and a canvas bag over my shoulder. I proceeded to the side of the room where the photo show was playing and carefully positioned the box among the other presents. Pictures of a baby bump, parties for gender reveal, maternity shots. My sister mumbled something loud enough for me to hear as she passed me carrying a dish of food. This time, try not to be weird. I didn't even give her a glance. Don't worry. I won't be invisible for long, I responded with a smile. She scowled a little but continued to move. Perhaps she mistook me for a joke. I meant every word, whether it was harsh or just exhausted. The host watched as the buffet line dwindled and everyone took their seats. Rachel, my cousin, got up and clinked her glass to get attention. She smiled and continued, "We want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate sweet baby Ellie. We are incredibly appreciative of all of your love and support." Courteous cheers, faces with smiles. I stood close to the light switch at the room's edge. When I synced to my laptop the previous evening, Rachel said, "My fingers were already encircling the little remote control I carried in my pocket. We would now want to present a brief film homage to our incredible family and everyone who helped make this happen. A few faces may be familiar to some of you." The presentation turned to dark as she pointed to the projector. My version started then. People were first unaware of the change. Birthdays, old reunions, family barbecues, and a few harmless pictures were the beginning. The captions then modified, though. July 4th, 2023. All but Eric were invited. Dinner on Mom's birthday. We assumed you were occupied. 2025 family picnic. Nobody told you, did they? Every slide has a timestamp, labeled and dated. I took the screenshots from texts on Facebook. Even that dumb family WhatsApp group, from which I had been kicked out without warning. The room started to change. You sensed it. People are looking anxiously at Jen, Mom, and Dad, craning their necks and muttering. Then came the real kicker, a presentation that only showed a running tab and a spreadsheet that listed all of the costs and favors. Everything from loan repayments to Christmas meals that I had contributed to or paid for over the years. I never requested a refund. A brief comment marked the conclusion of each row, never paid back, never expressed gratitude. The room was quiet by the time the sum appeared on the screen, $11,700. I left it hanging, no voiceover, no music. In a room full of individuals who are choking on embarrassment, they are just cold numbers. The last slide included a picture of me grinning while holding a birthday cake by myself. "Don't worry, I brought my own party," the caption said. The screen then became black. With the remote still in my fingers, I took a step forward. I said quietly, too quiet, perhaps, "I appreciate you watching. I just wanted to make sure that this time I wasn't overlooked. A pin may have been dropped." Mom got to her feet. She had a pallid face. "What was that, Eric?" I gave her a direct look. That was the reality. Her father parted his lips, then shut them again. As if I had grown a second head, Jen simply gazed at me. Turning to Rachel, I gave her a USB containing all of the original images and documents. You can choose to keep them or remove them. After that, I grabbed my canvas bag and made my way to the door. Once more, people were whispering, but not about how I was too quiet or always late. It had to do with what they had just witnessed, what they had disregarded, and what they had permitted. Jen clicked angrily on the tile as she followed me out on her heels. That was a mess! You embarrassed the entire family, Eric. I turned to face her as I paused just outside the door. I reminded the family, Jen. There is a distinction. She folded her arms. What exactly are you attempting to demonstrate? I inhaled. It's the type you take before shutting a door that you know won't open again. That I mattered, and that I was present. That after the party is over, I'm not the guy that everyone remembers. After that, I departed. However, it wasn't the end, not even close. For what followed? After that video, what happened? The actual repercussions started at that point. The beginning of the call, the beginning of the story's unraveling, and the emergence of secrets. Things moved from awkward to explosive at that point. I didn't immediately return home. I let the spring air chill the silent storm inside of me as I drove around the city with the windows down. I wasn't upset. I'm not the same person I was. Not that smoldering anger that silently tore at me. No. I sensed something crisper and more distinct now. A peculiar sort of tranquility that only results from a long overdue conflict. Finally, I had stated it without yelling, pleading, or hoping that anybody would get it. I'd put it all out and went out on my terms. However, peace has a way of upending those who feed on dominance. I received 9 missed calls when I returned to my flat. 1 from Rachel, 2 from Mom, 1 from Dad for Jen, and an unidentified number that I was very certain was Marie's attempt to hide her call. They were sent to voicemail. I wasn't prepared for guilt trips, tears, or excuses. Not quite yet. The group chat was then revived. Indeed, it was the same family group chat from which I had been secretly ejected 6 months prior. It seems like someone thought that now would be the ideal moment to read me. As I made tea, the notice appeared. You are now a member of the family. Jen sent the initial message. Well, that presentation was very inappropriate. This wasn't your therapy session. It was a baby's baptism. Mom then added her voice. Eric, that was really upsetting, honey. You made us seem foolish in front of everyone. You may have simply had a private conversation with us. I get that you're furious, Rachel, but letting it all out at a baby shower? Not cool. Then Dad arrived. Adult up. That was it. Only those 2 words. Adult up. No apology, no explanation. Just the guy who told me I needed to grow up for a while and let me pay for his auto repairs without saying thank you. I gazed at my mobile device. I was on the verge of responding. Must compose a lengthy article with precise wording that dismantles the yearly cycle of unspoken animosity. Every second of being overlooked. I willingly offered every kindness and smile I had, only to be treated like a seat filler in their lives. But then I understood that words would not make a difference. They were already certain of my identity. Keep quiet, Eric. Eric, that's helpful. The man who never refuses. Only when he dared to speak out or when they needed anything did they notice him. I thus didn't answer. I departed from the gathering. Then the texts began to come in, each one more desperate than the one before. Try it again, Jen. You got your message across. Stop now, please. You're exacerbating it. Next were mothers. Even if you've always been theatrical, this is excessive. All we wanted to do was keep you from feeling uncomfortable. Keep my own family away from me. Then Rachel, in her typical kind manner, we could chat if you could join us for supper. Only us. I'd paid them all no attention. A mediocre sit-down meal where someone microwaved store-brand lasagna and imagined it could absorb decades of neglect was not what I wanted. Can't we just go on? I didn't want the defensive jokes, the weak grins, or the abrupt turns. Since I wasn't going anywhere, not quite yet. The actual change occurred 3 days later. It started when my former coworker Sam called. Dude, why is your sister inquiring about your job? He remarked. What? I got her LinkedIn direct message. Stated that she wanted to know whether everything was well at work and was worried that you were behaving out. She inquired as to whether your recent endeavors had been impacted by your mental health. I went cold. What is she? Sam let out a sigh. That's cold, dude, but I remained silent. Unless she wanted assistance making her resume appear nice, Jen had never even come to my office and had never inquired about my position. She was now attempting to rewrite the story before I had a chance by contacting my coworkers. I looked at Facebook that evening as well. The family was trying to minimize the harm. A picture from the baptism had been cleverly edited to remove the slideshow event from Rachel's lengthy, emotional description. Family is the most important thing. Even if we're not flawless, we do show up, and occasionally folks who feel excluded lash out. Let's all keep in mind to love one another throughout difficult times. There was a lot of passive-aggressive sympathy in the comment area. Rachel, I'm praying for you to be strong. Some folks simply require care. The larger individual is you, preserving you. I remained silent. It wasn't even pleasant to me. However, I took a screenshot of every last phrase. My family had never understood, that being silent does not imply ignorance, that I wasn't paying attention just because I wasn't the loudest person in the room. Observing, listening, recalling. I began planning the next move as they frantically rewrote the tale to portray me as unstable, resentful, or self-centered. Clarity, not retaliation for the sake of retaliation. A silent justice of sorts. I began to gather receipts, not only those that are sentimental, actual ones. Email threats, text messages, Venmo transactions, and bank statements. Every penny, every favor, and every instance in which I had stepped up and received doormat treatment in return. Then an unforeseen event occurred. Rachel, Ellie's mother. I got a call from Sister Sophie. It had been months, perhaps a year, since we had spoken. She sounded different, though, hesitant, as if she had witnessed a building catching fire and was unsure whether to scream or reach for a bucket. "Eric," she muttered. "I apologize for blinking, but I just wanted to say that I saw what happened." "Are you?" It was not a picnic that I attended. I was also not invited. According to Jen, it was a minor matter. However, I became aware of how long you've been coping with this after viewing that slideshow. I was at a loss for words. For the first time, it was recognized aloud by someone. Anybody, she went on. There are more people than you think who have been forgotten and pushed out. Suddenly, this wasn't just about me, so you're not the only one who has been trapped with me. I wasn't excluded from a single family photo or an unappreciated birthday. Picking favorites and throwing the others away like leftovers at the back of the refrigerator was part of the family's habit and tradition. I had just been the one to speak out at last. And now, people were now observing. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years began to message me. An elderly relative who resided in 2 different states. Even my godmother claimed that because of the way they treated people like you, she hadn't attended family events in years. Each message made me more determined. I wasn't insane. I wasn't going overboard. They had avoided the mirror for years, and I was it. They were rushing to break it now that I had held it up. I realized then that I hadn't gone far enough. What happened next? That was the part that really ensured I would never be forgotten. Tell me, though, if you want to know what I did next and how the family's ideal of perfection fell apart, because the actual fireworks began there. It took me a whole week to vanish. Only from them, not from the world. The family members continued to blow up my phone, so I muted and stopped answering texts. I then let the dust settle as they tried to place blame on one another. Jen made 6 more attempts to phone me. Under the pretense of emotional blackmail, Mom left 2 lengthy voicemails filled with phony worry. This family has endured a great deal. Don't dismiss it because of a miscommunication, Eric. The direct communication from Dad was my favorite. Your mother was embarrassed by you. Make it right. Nothing was fixed by me. I became silent because I was preparing and working. Not an angry outburst or tantrum, but a thorough, composed, and well-considered reckoning. You see, I was familiar enough with my family to know precisely how they would act. They attempted to defame me, covertly trash me behind the scenes, and publicly repair their image by accusing me of being unstable and secretive. However, I had something unexpected for them. Documentation. Do you recall the spreadsheet from the presentation? And it was only the beginning. I retrieved all of my emails and receipts from helping Rachel's husband get his first job following his DUI. Every time I helped Mom with unforeseen ID expenses, the years of payments for Dad's auto insurance, or the time I saved Jen from a credit card debt so bad that 3 collectors called her in a single week, I sent money to aid her. They didn't even express gratitude. Not once. I put everything together in a clear, concise, and factual document. No taunts, no charges, just the facts. A chronology, a trend. I also included a little quotation or message they had sent at the time for every line. Messages that demonstrated the disparity. Could you just do this one thing, Eric? You're very helpful all the time. No one else has the time. I typed only this at the conclusion of the paper. I did all of this because I felt like I belonged to a family, not because I had to. Now I realize I was only a resource. I'm not available for that position anymore. Please find attached my letter of resignation from the unpaid position of family doormat. After that, I distributed it to everyone, not just the main family group, after uploading it to a shared Google Drive. I emailed it to all of my relatives, including cousins, aunts, uncles, and even those who hadn't spoken to me in a long time, particularly them. In case anyone is wondering why I won't be attending the upcoming close family get-together, I've attached a brief email heading. That was it. The reaction was prompt. It began modestly. Some texts from relatives who live far away. Messages like, "Damn, I had no idea," or "This explains so much," or "All I could hardly recall." You simply wrote what half the family has been thinking for years. One person even commented. The repercussions followed. This time, Mom called in a rage, even angry. "How dare you tell everyone about our personal matters?" "It was a family enterprise," I answered coolly. "That's right. And the entire family is on board for the first time." She ended the call. Jen lost it in the group conversation, accusing me of being vengeful, manipulative, and victim-obsessed. However, her outburst just made matters worse for her, as others began to voice their opinions. Sophie reminded everyone that Jen had purposefully left her out of festivities as well. Leo, my cousin, sent screenshots of Jen making fun of a family member in a private message. What everyone else was thinking was uttered by Aunt Marie. Bless her. Although it may have been awkward, this had to be spoken. Dad didn't say anything. He fell quiet. I knew it had fallen that way. He doesn't stop talking until he realizes he's in a tight spot. However, Rachel's husband's actions were what ultimately turned the tide. Recall that the person I assisted in getting a job just responded one words in response to the email. "Eric, you're not incorrect. I regret not saying something sooner that would have solved the problem." People began to come up and share their personal stories of being exploited, ignored, and snubbed. It seemed as though the family's flawless exterior had been broken, allowing everyone to breathe at last. The family's well-maintained image started to fall apart in a matter of days. Fake togetherness, all grins, picture dumps, and matching shirt picnics. Mirrors and smoke were everywhere, but the haze was already dissipating. Personally, I didn't go back to the family events. I never apologized for not answering the branch texts that were supposed to cheer them up or the passive-aggressive invites. It was quiet when I was outside. I resumed trekking and got back in touch with old pals. Trying to balance my family responsibilities had caused me to lose contact. I even began therapy because I had the opportunity to fully examine everything I had pushed aside for decades, not because I was damaged. Something that may have previously broken me occurred a few months later. Mom had a little operation and ended up in the hospital. Jen contacted me, obviously expecting me to drop everything and come over right away. But it wasn't anything life-threatening. "Eric, you're still her son." I hesitated before responding. "No. I told those who treated me like a son that I was one. I don't know who you and your mother thought I was, but I've changed." I blocked her after that. Rachel sent me an email a week later to really apologize, not to guilt-trip me. She apologized for her complicity and stated she was unaware of how awful things had gone. Although I didn't forgive her completely, I valued her candor. I informed her. We didn't act as though nothing was wrong. I hadn't had a genuine adult talk with a family member in years until that moment. What's the best part? Ellie? As the family ghost, I was unknown to little Ellie as she grew up. In any case, I sent her a birthday present. Not because of guilt. I still felt that things should be done for the right reasons, but not for the wrong people. So I didn't buy my way in. The call eventually ended. The messages ceased. I grinned when the invites ceased. Because I wasn't an afterthought for the first time in my life, it didn't occur every time. I wasn't a +1, a wallet, a ghost, or an assistant. The person who stopped apologizing for taking up space was me, Eric. And believe me, they never forgot me again. They were unable to. Story 3. Evan is my name. As a 28-year-old, I suppose the simplest way to begin is to say that I used to believe that family loyalty meant that if you showed up and offered your time, money, and attention, people would notice and find it important. However, this past Easter showed that I was mistaken. Without a doubt, I am the oldest. Jeremy, my brother, is 22. When I was 16, my father got remarried. Shortly after my mother's death, even typing out that section still hurts. Everything was kind of destroyed by her death. Dad, too, moved on with uncanny quickness, as I tried my best to keep everything together. He was seeing a woman called Karen within a year. Because, yes, with a C, naturally. Additionally, she had already moved into the house we had shared with Mom by the time I graduated from high school. After then, it was never truly a family. It was more of a hybrid setup that favored Karen and Jeremy. I tried it first. Yes, I did. I volunteered to assist Jeremy with his schoolwork. I carried groceries home. During my time in college, I even obtained a part-time job to help out. Karen was always courteous, but it felt very forced. It's kind of lovely, like when a customer grins at a cashier without looking them in the eye. As well as Dad, he simply dwindled. Began skipping my recitals, dismissing our movie evenings, and calling off the springtime father-son excursions we used to enjoy. Claimed to be occupied, but he wasn't. He simply gave up trying. When I eventually had enough of being the odd man out in my own home, I moved away at the age of 20. I didn't break off contact, though, even then. I continued to attend birthday celebrations. Gifts were still mailed. Like clockwork, they continued to call on Sundays. I seemed to be holding out hope. They could see me next time. Perhaps things will be different the next time. It wasn't. Spoiler alert. Karen made the decision to host a large family Easter celebration this year. She shared it in our group chat as if it were a huge surprise egg hunt in the backyard. Meal that is catered, customs inside the family. Despite rolling my eyes, I consented to attend, primarily because I thought, okay, why not? When Jeremy asked me directly. Perhaps this was an opportunity to catch up since I had the day off. However, I still enter their home in the hopes that it would seem familiar even though I know better. The day got off to a decent start. Karen set aside chores as if she were running a restaurant. Evan, you clear the tables and set up the egg search stations in the backyard. Juice cartons in the cooler are necessary for the children. Additionally, remember to use plastic cutlery. Please don't. No, thank you. Only directives. I refrained from arguing. I nodded, grinned, and started working. I usually do. These days, it's like muscle memory. I repaired a few swaying chairs, spread out the tablecloths, arranged the plastic eggs, and tidied the backyard. The caterer called to let me know they had forgotten the vegetarian meal, so I made a last-minute shopping run. I had to pay for it myself. By the way, $74.63 were never repaid, approximately 3p. MC cousins, in-laws, and Karen's side of the family began to arrive. In a button-up shirt with grass stains on my knees, I was the only one perspiring. Somehow, everyone else had arrived clean, new, and naive. Karen's sister welcomed me as if I were the hired servant. "Oh, it must have been you who put everything up. You're doing a fantastic job." I wanted to yell and laugh at the same time as she said it in that fake, cheerful tone. At first, my own uncle didn't even recognize me. Jeremy mumbled and hugged me from the side. "I'm glad you came, dude," before he and his girlfriend vanished. As the afternoon wore on, I came to a realization. At none of the tables had anyone reserved a place for me. It was an oversight, I kept telling myself, and perhaps someone will see and correct it. However, as more people arrived, more chairs were occupied, and eventually I found myself standing there with a plastic cup of tepid lemonade and a fake smile on my face. At last, Karen said that dinner was ready. With paper plates in hand, people began to line up close to the buffet, joking and laughing. I stayed close to the folding table where I had placed the forks. It happened at that moment. My dad's voice was abrupt, cutting, and just loud enough to make everyone around us stop talking as I reached over to fix a napkin holder. He said, "Evan," without glancing at me, "you are now only a visitor to this family. Don't go too far." I felt as though I had been sucker punched. I didn't even think about it at first. I squinted in confusion, wondering whether I had misheard him. However, Karen nodded while standing next to him with her arms folded. With a smug little smirk, as if she had been waiting years to say it out, she said, "It's not your place to run things here." I turned to face my younger brother, Jeremy, who as a child would follow me around like a shadow. He glanced aside after meeting my gaze. Nothing. Not a word. I refrained from crying. I refrained from screaming. I realized that I was the only one in that yard who didn't feel like I belonged in a family, and I simply stood there holding that same dumb plastic cup I was formerly a member of. I entered without saying anything. I located my luggage where I had left it earlier that morning, beside the front entrance. I then began disconnecting devices. There is no Wi-Fi router. When it broke last year and no one cared to fix it, I bought it. The speakers in the garden. Mine. I never received them back after lending them to Jeremy for his graduation. Lost. The catering is being kept heated by that additional generator. Unexpected. I also have it. Last winter, during a snowfall, I left it with Dad as a precaution. As if it weighed nothing, I disconnected it and took it to my car. I had the impression that something inside of me had suddenly snapped, like the years of being silent and going above and above. Pain just vanished when swallowed. I wasn't finished yet either. I moved slowly and steadily outside to my car, as if I wasn't enraged within. As if I hadn't just been informed out in front of a large crowd that I was no longer a member of my own family. I wasn't going to weep, though. Not for them. No more. I saw someone observing me from the kitchen window as I unlocked my trunk and began packing the equipment. Jeremy, you stayed inside. You remained silent, simply gazed. It nearly made me chuckle. He could have been shocked. As usual, I didn't simply stealthily go. Not now. I got into the car, loaded up, and sat with the motor going. I accessed a little folder I keep on my notes app while looking down at my phone. It had several items that my family had conveniently forgotten I had covered throughout the years, such as the auto insurance policy that was still in my name, and it was titled Shared Expenses. I stepped in to co-sign the new car and secure a favorable rate for Dad through my provider when he totaled his a few years ago. He didn't ever move it. I suppose it was habit, shame, or the utilities that made me pay the monthly premiums in secret. When they went through a difficult financial period last year, Karen took a leave of absence from work to concentrate on her well-being, whatever that meant, and I had never formally removed myself as the secondary account holder. The house was still in Mom's name when she died away. For a couple months, I promised to pay the electricity bill. A year passed during those months. I still had access and control, and I had all the account logins. There was the big one after that. I wasn't only paying for their Amazon Prime membership and the Wi-Fi. I also served as their new HVAC systems guarantor. Guess who received the call when the contractor needed a co-signer? They had experienced an issue with their old unit during the worst summer heat wave in decades. Me. I made no hesitation at all, simply arrived and signed. To get things started, the first installment was paid for out of pocket. And you know what else? The contract was with me. I so-clicked transfer ownership, unlinked my card, and accessed the billing interface. Because they hadn't made enough regular payments, therefore it wouldn't allow me. Instead, I selected Cancel Autopay. After that, I signed in to the electric provider, put the payment on hold, and sent a brief text message to customer support. I would want to be removed as a payee as I no longer reside at this location. Within minutes, they responded, stating that they will get in touch with the primary holder to confirm. I grinned. After that, I located the insurance app, opened the auto policy, deleted my payment method, sent a cancellation notice with the month's end date, and, lastly, I took a screenshot of each email confirmation, cancellation, and removal. I sent my dad an email with that subject line, "Here's what I'll stop offering since I'm only a visitor." I sent it. I then took off in my car. The call began about 5 minutes away from me. Jeremy was the first, followed by Karen and then Dad. They didn't all leave voicemails. I didn't respond. Rather, I parked my car, drove to my apartment, and prepared a sandwich the same kind I always ate as a child. Jelly and peanut butter with the crust removed. Something familiar was what I needed. Something rooted. Jeremy didn't text until approximately an hour later. What's going on, dude? I looked at it for a long time before I answered. Just a guest, I texted. Do you recall? No answer. When I woke up the following morning, I discovered that Karen had 4 missed calls, 2 emails from Dad, 1 angry, 1 concerned, and a voicemail from my aunt saying she'd heard things got tense, and maybe I was overreacting. Overreacting? I helped throw an entire family gathering paid out of pocket and was told publicly I didn't belong. But sure, I was the problem. They underestimated me again. That afternoon, the power went out at their house. I know this because Jeremy texted, "Power's off. Did you do something?" I waited 5 minutes, then replied, "You'd have to ask the family. I'm just the guest." 2 hours later, my dad left me a voicemail. His voice was tight, controlled, but there was a little crack in it. Like he couldn't quite believe this was happening. "Evan," he said, "we need to talk. I think things got out of hand, Karen." Karen shouldn't have said that. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You know, I appreciate everything you've done. Let's have a conversation, please. I didn't respond. I needed him to feel it, really feel it. Because this wasn't just about Easter. It wasn't about a folding chair or some plastic eggs. It was about every ignored effort, every brushed off holiday, every time I called and no one picked up. It was about being made to feel like a burden in the same house where I used to hear bedtime stories and make pancakes on Sundays. It was about the little boy who watched his dad move on too fast, who kept hoping year after year that maybe, just maybe, he'd be seen again. And now he finally was. I wasn't finished yet either. I waited a full 24 hours before even thinking about calling him back. Not because I was playing games, but because I needed the time to think, to breathe, to not react emotionally like I always had in the past. I wanted to go into this clear-headed, not with hope that he'd suddenly apologize or explain it all away, but to really hear what he had to say. When the control slipped out of his hands. So the next evening, around 6 p.m., I called. He answered on the first ring. "Evan." He breathed out like my name was a lifeline. Thank you for calling." "Look, I don't know what Karen said or what you think I said. No," I cut in my voice. Calm, firm. "Don't start there. You know exactly what you said. Don't pretend it didn't happen." There was silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, but he didn't interrupt. "Because I want to be really clear about something," I continued. "You said I was a guest, out loud in front of your wife, your son, and every person in that yard. You claimed I didn't belong. After I spent my whole Sunday and half my income making sure your family gathering went successfully. Evan, it was exactly about that," I said. "You made a decision, and I made mine." He groaned, and immediately his voice took on that old, impatient edge, the one I'd heard in disputes when I was a teenager, the one he used when he wanted to sound like the adult in the room. "I think you're overreacting. You went it too far, cutting the electricity, removing the speakers. You're penalizing the whole family over a single statement." I almost laughed. A single line. "That statement wasn't a slip-up. It was how you've treated me for years. It simply slipped out this time." He was silent again. "Look," he finally said gently, "I understand. It hasn't been flawless. However, you've always been the one with strength. Jeremy never handles things as well as you do. I depended on you for that reason. I assumed you could handle it because of this." It was there. The admission. The hidden reality of 10 years of unbalanced love. "You handed it to me because you believed I could handle it," I inquired. "She treats me like a servant because you allow her. I took up the slack as you let Jeremy skate by. You never inquired about my well-being, as well as when I eventually quit doing everything. I'm being theatrical all of a sudden." "I'm not saying that at all. You're right on the money." I sensed something within me, sturdy and steady. It clicks into position, nor resentment, nor rage. Only finality. None of the screaming sort. It simply walks away. "The thing is this, I'm not mad," I said. "I'm finished." "Evan? No. I'm tired of attempting to show my worth to those who only take notice of me when I'm helpful. Do you want the electricity to be restored? Make your own bill payments. Do you want your auto insurance to be covered? Transfer the HVAC policy. Now that's yours. I will no longer be carrying this." I allowed silence to return. Dad, you made me the visitor. I'm checking out then. Before he could answer, I hung up. He wasn't blocked by me. I didn't follow up with a spectacular email. I just vanished from the part they had given me. The following days were calm, tense, and silent. No more messages or phone calls. My cousin, with whom I still communicate, informed me that there had been a complete breakdown following Easter. Karen accused Jeremy of failing to control the situation. Jeremy accused Karen of making things worse. It seems like my dad made an effort to make things better, but during an unplanned heat wave in the midst of the week, the air conditioner broke down. Yes, whatever cool he still had was shattered by that. A visit from an emergency technician required cash payment. It turns out that everything breaks down when the one accountable party is removed from the picture. I concentrated on my personal life. I took a few days off work, slept well, cleaned my apartment, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't burdened by the responsibility of being the fixer, the good son, and the one using denial and duct tape to keep the family together. Then Jeremy arrived at my residence a week later. Before opening, I checked on everyone after hearing the knock. He seemed hot and guilty, as if he had been pacing the hallway for too long. He said, "Hey!" I arched an eyebrow. "You had the option to text. I thought you wouldn't respond." I remained silent. "Simply wait." I had no idea. After a moment, he spoke about everything. The insurance, the catering, and the payments. I had no idea how much work you were doing. I rested my weight on the doorframe, crossed arms. "Did you not want to know?" He gave a nod. "Yes, I didn't. I simply adapted to it. Everything is always handled by you. I suppose I assumed you enjoyed it. Did I appear to like it?" He gave a little smile before lowering his gaze. "No, not at all." A long pause ensued. He wasn't here to argue, I could tell. That was novel. He said, "I spoke to Dad. He's okay. He's his father. In addition to accusing Karen, he is also attempting to make you feel bad for leaving him. He was fortunate to have stayed as long as he did," I told him. I nearly grinned at that. "I want to fix things with you," he continued. "Not for them. Only us." I looked at his face. There was no entitlement there for once. No arrogant younger sibling smiled. "Just be honest. Do you wish to make it better?" I inquired. "First, stop relying on me to do all the work." He gave another nod. "Just." I moved aside and widened the door. "Do you want water?" He let out a breath as if he had been holding it the whole time. "Yes, that would be fantastic." Something changed as we sat down in my kitchen. Not entirely recovered. Not pardoned, but sufficiently cracked to allow air to flow once more. My father would not stop calling. I wasn't playing along anymore, but I was certain that Karen might even send a remorseful email about restoring trust. The visitor was gone for good this time. That evening, Jeremy and I spoke for almost 2 hours about everything. Not just the Easter catastrophe, the unbalanced years, the silent grudges, and the way I always felt like the fallback option. Son, the filler. While Dad and Karen swooned over Jeremy as if he were a rare artifact, he was the one who kept things going. Jeremy, to his credit, did not deflect. He offered no justifications. He paid attention. At one point, he added, "I suppose I was simply lazy. Letting you carry it all was simpler. And I suppose I assumed that must have been okay since no one was requesting that you stop." "That's the issue," silently, I said. "Nobody ever inquired about its safety. They just made an assumption." Slowly, he nodded. "I apologize, dude. Strangely enough, I did believe him. In a long time, for the first time, it seemed more like I was speaking to my brother than the golden child of Dad and Karen. The man who used to sneak chocolates into my room during finals week or urge me to stay up late to play Mario Kart when we were kids, not the youngster who borrowed money and never paid it back. Everything was warped by the version of him that before all the partiality. Since it wasn't, I didn't say it was all right. However, I just said thank you, and that was plenty for now. In the greatest conceivable sense, the ensuing weeks were unremarkable. After returning home from work, I watched films that I hadn't seen in a long time. Instead of ordering takeout while rushing between obligations, I made dinner for myself. Rather of serving as a stopover in between catastrophes, my place turned into a sanctuary. I hadn't felt so at ease since college. Dad persisted in trying. It seemed subtle at first. I quickly turned down a shared calendar invite to a family breakfast and a meme that was emailed. Then followed the more frantic texts of apologies. That day, we were all under stress. I didn't intend it that way, you know. You have been a member of this family for all time. Please don't do this, Evan. We're being torn apart by you. I was genuinely amused by that one. Me? I'm not going to destroy anyone. I've had enough of being the glue. He didn't respond. Then the last straw appeared. 3 weeks following Easter, I got a lengthy email from that, not to say sorry, to guilt me not to accept responsibility. Karen is devastated. Jeremy has been agitated. Your point has been made. However, perhaps we should stop penalizing everyone. Something within of me was ignited by punishing that word. Because, let me explain, this was not a vengeful act on my part. To harm anyone, I didn't flick the switch. I did it to remind them that I wasn't just a quiet, reliable footnote in their lives, to break the cycle, and because it was the only way to be hurt. However, it seems like defending myself was a form of punishment. I replied in writing, "Do you wish to discuss punishment? 10 years, let's discuss. Your home, car, and bills have all benefited from my assistance. When you were short, I bought groceries for you, covered Jeremy's application costs for college. Karen's money for the health retreat lent care. I was your backup wallet, backup organizer, and backup emotional support system, and she never gave me anything in return. I organized birthday celebrations. I got some decorations. For years, I phoned on Sundays. During Christmas last year, you twice overlooked my birthday. While Jeremy received a new laptop, you gave me a $20 gift card. I already had an excellent setup, you stated. And after I organized, paid, set up, and cleaned for Easter, you said I was only a visitor while standing in front of the family. It's not your place to label my limitations as punishment. When I eventually stop allowing you to harm me, you don't get to do it for years and then act surprised. Your decisions were your own. Mine is being made by myself." I added a single line at the end. "I hope the best for you. However, I'm finished." I was too. I did not wait for a response. I banned his phone for my own peace, archived the discussion, and took a total step back. This is when things start to get interesting. I received a call from Jeremy 2 months later. His voice was low as he continued, "Dad moved out. He was expelled by Karen last week." What? She discovered that he had fallen behind on his HVAC bills. He assured her again that they would be taken care of. However, he chose to disregard it once you canceled everything. I assumed you would give in eventually. I shut my eyes. He did, of course. Consequently, they began receiving final notifications. The repairman then returned and informed them that if they didn't pay, a lien would be put on their property. Karen snapped. She held him responsible for everything, claimed that none of it should have been your fault. I arched an eyebrow. She says that now. Jeremy let out a sigh. I'm not defending her, you see. She remains Karen. But I suppose they collapsed without you acting as a buffer. It would never endure. He fell silent for a moment. Uncle Rob has been his place to stay. Stated that he is considering selling the residence. Whoa. In the backyard, I said all of it in a single phrase. Jeremy gave a sour laugh. Yes, I suppose you weren't only a visitor. After that, we continued to communicate. Slowly, informally. He returned a couple more times. We go out to lunch. For once, he truly began to inquire about my life. And for the first time in years, he brought a baked cake for my birthday, same as when Mom made chocolate with raspberry filling. I had no idea he was a baker. He responded, I thought I owed you one. I won't pretend that things got better right away for everyone you covered. It didn't. Not all wounds heal well. The bleeding simply ceased. However, I was at ease. That was something too. My dad didn't reply to my last email, though. However, I received a letter in the mail 3 months later, written by hand. No address for return. I don't expect forgiveness either. I read your email 100 times, and I'm not even sure whether I deserve it. In every way, you were correct. You mending everything became second nature to me, and I wasn't sure how I was going to manage without you when you stopped. It wasn't your failure, it was mine. I apologize. Even though I'm not sure whether we'll ever speak again, I hope you'll remember the positive aspects of us because I do. The dot. I looked at it for a while. After folding it up, I put it in a drawer and turned to go. Not vindicated, not outraged. Simply free, because sometimes the most potent thing is the truth. The sound of revenge is not loud. It's neither a public takedown nor a spectacular showdown. Sometimes there is quiet. It is departing. It's telling me that you can't harm me anymore, as well as meaning it.